I'm Chris Glover. Tonight, mixed feelings around the end of mask mandates in Ontario.
I think I'll wear them when it's busy still, just while I'm getting used to it.
I think the timing is right. I already see folks who are not wearing their masks, and that's fine as well.
Masks will no longer be required on public transit and in hospitals, but not everyone thinks it's time to let our guard down. Plus,
when I saw that, when I received that claim and I read it, I literally hit the roof.
The TTC claims the woman who was pushed onto the subway tracks and is now suing the transit agency was standing too close to the tracks. And
a couple beers, some good golf, nothing better.
I missed it a lot, really.
After a pandemic hiatus, some of the biggest names in golf are back and fans could not be happier. The TTC and the mayor are urging people not to completely ditch face coverings on transit. Those calls today come after the province announced it's ending its mask mandate for public transit this Saturday. Meanwhile, some Toronto hospitals say they'll continue to require masks for now. Lorenda Redekop has the latest on our top story tonight.
As of Saturday, you won't be required to wear a mask on public transit anymore, though the TTC still strongly recommends it. So does the mayor.
It's not done yet. COVID is not gone. So in that sense, people are being given advice. I hope they follow it.
Masking will still be mandatory for staff and riders of Wheel-Trans. If you're taking the GO or Up Express, customers won't have to wear a mask anymore as of Saturday, but staff will.
We need our staff in order to provide the public transit services. So we've been just doing things gradually with our staff and assessing things as they go.
Commuters have mixed reactions.
I think I'll wear them when it's busy still, comes around.
Just because the policy has we're totally in the clear, and I think it's responsible for people to continue to wear their masks.
So it's better to wear the mask. So like now we are used to it, so it's not an issue for us.
I think it's time we move back to normal for good.
The province-wide mandate will lift for hospitals, but Toronto hospitals responded saying they'd keep their own masking requirements in place. The Ontario Hospital Association said it's not aware of any hospitals in the province that are deciding to go mask optional. It had urged the chief medical officer to continue the mask mandate. The association's CEO saying in a statement, a provincial order carries the force of law behind it and directly supports hospitals as they enforce compliance. It says even though COVID hospitalizations are going down, vulnerable populations are still at risk, and that it's awaiting guidance from the province that will replace the mandate. Lorenda Redekop, CBC News, Toronto.
To Vaughan now, where a man has been taken to hospital with life-threatening injuries after he was shot near Highway 7 and Pine Valley Drive this afternoon.
Upon arrival of the first officers and medical personnel, we did in fact find a male victim. That adult male victim has been transported to a trauma unit and is currently in critical condition, life-threatening injuries right now.
York Regional Police responded to reports of gunshots shortly after 2 p.m. They arrived on scene to find a man in a car suffering from gunshot wounds, and they say the suspect took off before they arrived. Police are asking anyone in the area with information on this one to come forward. In Brampton, a man is dead and a woman is under arrest after a collision this morning.
I can tell you that an adult female has been taken into custody as a result of the collision. However, charges are pending, and as we know, the investigation is still early on, and they will be looking into all aspects of it.
Happened just before 9 at the intersection of Main and Vaudin. 4 vehicles were involved, and the victim was taken to the hospital where he was pronounced dead. Police have not yet released details on his age or identity, and investigators again are asking anyone who was in the area at the time and saw what happened or has dashcam video to contact police. Lawyers representing the woman who was pushed onto subway tracks and is now suing the TTC say the transit operator is victim blaming. Part of the TTC's defense in the $1 million lawsuit is that the woman was standing too close to the platform edge. Ali Chiasson has that story.
The victim of this subway pushing incident from April is suing the TTC for $1 million. The lawsuit claims negligence, that the TTC should have barriers at platform level to prevent such a thing from happening.
So if you're at the platform and the train is not in, the doors are closed. You can't fall onto the tracks. You can't be pushed onto the tracks.
While the alleged pusher, Edith Frayne, is being dealt with in the criminal court system, facing an attempted murder charge, this lawsuit has been heating up. Lawyers representing the TTC have submitted their statement of defense, which the plaintiff's lawyer says reads like victim blaming.
I was like, I cannot believe that they actually went so far as to draft this claim, this defense this way.
In it, they say she, quote, chose to stand too close to the edge of the platform and failed to pay due care to her surroundings.
Quite frankly, that's like blaming the rape victim for wearing a short skirt.
It also states that the victim, Shamsa al-Balushi, knew her alleged attacker, which her lawyer denies. And then there's this, quote, she was traveling alone and unassisted on public transit when she knew or ought to have known that it was unsafe for her to do so.
And the parts of the defense where they defend themselves and say, you know, we did what we could, safety was, that's fine. I accept that that's their defense, and that's a legitimate defense, and it's very technical, and that'll be argued out in a court. But to go that next level and essentially victim blame.
The TTC has refused to comment on this, saying they don't comment on ongoing legal matters. Soon after this footage circulated, there were renewed calls for platform barriers, something the city has looked into before. However, the projected cost of over $1 billion to install them has been deemed too pricey.
You have to put the safety of your passengers ahead of your budget. And they chose not to do that. And the way they've defended this case just proves that.
Now that the TTC has submitted their defense, the lawsuit enters the discovery phase. Ali Chiasson, CBC News, Toronto.
A man was shot and killed near an East End apartment building last night.
We do have multiple suspects and very vague descriptions on what those suspects look like, and we are appealing to the public for any assistance that they can provide us with this investigation.
The victim has been identified as 24-year-old Javante Daly. The shooting happened in the area of Lawrence East and Moss Bank Drive, east of Scarborough Golf Club Road. Callers reported hearing gunfire around 8 p.m. and seeing someone lying on the ground. Now, homicide detectives have taken over the investigation, and police say there were a number of people in that area at the time of the shooting. And they're, of course, asking anyone who may have witnessed what happened to contact investigators. Some resident groups are slamming a move by Toronto Police to reallocate its community response unit officers. Those are the officers that do everything from respond to crimes in a community to working with businesses and responding to special events or even demonstrations. As Farmarelli tells us, there are concerns about what the loss means for crime prevention and safety in certain areas.
I'm shocked. I'm sad.
Dee Dee Cameron's reaction to losing all community response unit officers in her area of Mount Pleasant and Eglinton. 8 years ago, she started a neighborhood watch group. A big part of it, she says, collaborating with those officers on safety prevention.
They are the ones who talk to us, who teach us what's happening in our neighborhood, how to protect ourselves.
Toronto Police confirmed to CBC News as of this past Monday, all community response unit officers across the city are redeployed, with the exception of 3 divisions in the downtown area. Another concerned neighborhood group, the Bloor-Yorkville BIA. It says it's seen an increase in property crime and assaults.
We're upset and we're concerned. And part of that being is that we had been actually asking for increased service, and now we'll be getting dramatically less.
Toronto Police says the officers are being redeployed to the neighborhood officer program. They're also in communities, but have more specialized training and spend 4 years working in target communities.
I'm glad that the Toronto Police Service is expanding the neighborhood officer program.
While many support the expansion, there are questions about why so little information has been released on the program. One of its goals when it launched was to tackle the roots of gun violence.
The police service has not provided the community with any public information on what its plans are. Have they had any evaluation done, which is the basis for their expansion? Has the evaluation shown them how effective the program has been?
In a statement, Toronto police said they recognize these are noticeable changes and said it makes operational decisions to best police the city with its resources. It added it's committed to ensuring that public safety is maintained.
I understand that certain neighborhoods, certain divisions may need more policing.
For residents like Cameron, she gets the need to prioritize, but says she wishes it wasn't at the expense of her neighborhood. Farah Morali, CBC News, Toronto.
Meanwhile, Toronto police have arrested a 14-year-old after two women were attacked in the Weston and Lawrence area last weekend. Police say it happened last Saturday in a building at Weston and Bellevue Road. The first victim was followed into an elevator by a guy with a knife. She managed to escape to her apartment. The attacker then went to the building's laundry room, where he attacked another woman and sexually assaulted her at knife point. On Tuesday, police arrested a 14-year-old boy, and he has been charged with sex assault with a weapon and assault with a weapon. Now to a developing story in the United States, and a mass shooting at a business in Maryland has claimed several victims. There are reports this evening that at least 3 people have been killed and 1 has been critically injured. Also, a state trooper was shot and wounded by the suspect during a pursuit. Law enforcement personnel and emergency vehicles are on the scene in Smithsburg, which is 120 kilometers northwest of Baltimore. Authorities say the suspect is no longer a threat to the community, but little else is known at this point. The business is thought to be a company that makes concrete equipment. And in Washington, the congressional committee that's investigating the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol takes its hearings to primetime television tonight. The year-long investigation is an effort to show how the traditional peaceful transfer of power nearly collapsed and what it could mean for future elections. CBC's Makta Gabriselassie tells us what to expect.
Well, during the hearing, we are expecting to see never-seen-before footage from that day, as well as clips from videotaped depositions from witnesses, including Trump White House officials and members of his family. And we're also expecting to see live interviews from some witnesses, including Caroline Edwards. And she is a Capitol police officer, one of the first to be injured on January 6th. It's believed that she sustained a brain injury.
Those images, the smells, the yelling, the chaos, the blood, I mean, it was, that day was a war zone.
We're also expecting to hear from a documentarian who was following the Proud Boys, the far-right extremist group. He's believed to have footage from that day, and he will be testifying. And of course, leaders of that group have been charged with planning the attack. Now, the committee members investigating this say they talked to more than 1,000 witnesses. They went through more than 100,000 documents, and they say the evidence shows that there was a conspiracy to overturn the results of the election, and they say Donald Trump was at the center of that.
Multi-level, multi-step process of trying to negate, nullify, and destroy Joe Biden's majority in the Electoral College.
Meanwhile, many Republicans are dismissing the investigation and its findings.
Their focus on attacking their political opponents is so strong, they don't care about the rules.
This committee is not about seeking the truth. It is a smear campaign against President Donald Trump.
Tonight's hearing is just one of many. The next one is scheduled for Monday. Makta Gabriselassie, CBC News, Washington.
All right, so that was a lot of heavy stories in a row. So let's get Dahlia Ashby into the picture now. Maybe you can brighten up our days a little bit here, Dahlia.
I'll try. I know Mother Nature has been all over the place with us today, but I do have some bright news starting tomorrow. But first, let's start off with the normal highs for this time of year. It's 23 degrees. Right now, we are sitting at 22, so just a bit below that normal high. And with the normal low, we are right at the mark that we're supposed to be at. Currently, Toronto, we are sitting at 22 degrees, so a little bit on the warmer side today, although with those winds, it did feel a little cooler. Kingston, more on the cooler side than the rest of the region. Windsor, 22 degrees. And as you can see here, there's that precipitation starting to make its way through. And if we get a closer look right here, that precipitation is scattered all over the area, and that will carry through to the evening, but not overnight. It will clear up overnight. We'll have that 13 degrees. But like I said, there are those winds 20 kilometers an hour, gusting to 40 kilometers an hour. But tomorrow afternoon, 22 degrees, beautiful sunshine. And I'll have more on how the rest of the weekend is going to pan out. Chris?
All right, sounds good. Thanks, Dahlia.
This weather update is brought to you by Charlevoix Train, one of the most beautiful railways in Canada. Discover this spectacular railway from Quebec City.
After a 2-year hiatus because of the pandemic, the RBC Canadian Open is back. The first round is just wrapping up with a couple of Canadian golfers in contention. Now, that should be the story of the day, but this has been a controversial week in the golf world, something that's overshadowing the PGA's return. Greg Ross has the full story.
Many of the world's best golfers are competing in Canada once again at Toronto's St. George's Golf Club.
I missed it a lot, really.
Fans able to see their heroes up close and in person. In fact, sometimes a little too close.
It's coming at us.
It's definitely coming this way. Heads up. Heads up. Fortunately, nobody was hurt by this Jonathan Bird tee shot.
You gotta hope they hit it bad to see him that close. It's surreal. It's like a dream.
Definitely worth paying for, that's for sure.
While fans were excited to see who was here at St. George's, a lot of the talk around the golf course this week has been about who's not here. Dustin Johnson and Phil Mickelson are just two of the big-name golfers making headlines in recent weeks for agreeing to join the LIV Golf Tour, a new organization financially backed by the Saudi government, which is often scrutinized for human rights violations. Today, the PGA Tour announced that all 17 players who have joined are suspended.
Any PGA Tour matters, I'm not going to discuss publicly at this time.
It doesn't bother me. I'm very happy where I am.
It's unfortunate. I would love. I respect the PGA Tour a lot, and I would love to be able to play on it, and for that matter, play wherever you want.
Those are just some of the players who were lured away with huge signing bonuses, in some cases upwards of $100 million. Players who turned down massive paydays to stay with the PGA applauded the decision today.
I'm pleased. I think anybody that's shocked clearly hasn't been listening to the message that Jay and everybody's been putting out. You know, they took that risk going into it, whether they thought it was a risk or not. And, you know, like I've said the whole time, you know, I have great belief and great confidence in the PGA Tour and where we're going and where we're continuing to grow to.
Canadian Corey Connors refused to let today's announcement take away from the excitement of playing on home soil this week.
I don't know. Don't really have much to say in regards to that. Just, you know, trying to focus on the task at hand this week and try and put on a good show for the hometown fans.
Today's announcement means that the 17 players suspended will not be eligible to compete in any PGA-sanctioned event. That includes the President's Cup and the PGA Championship. Those players will be allowed to play in the U.S. Open, which gets underway next week, and the British Open in July. Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
Welcome back. The Bank of Canada released its annual review of the country's financial system today, and the report says Canada's financial system is strong, has weathered the pandemic well, but there is one key concern.
Our number one priority is to get inflation back to target, and we've been very clear with Canadians that they should expect a rising path for interest rates to moderate demand and bring it in line with supply.
The central bank also warns that high levels of household debt and high home prices are the two biggest threats to the country's financial system. It cautions that homeowners who took on high levels of debt to buy a house during the pandemic could find themselves under even greater financial pressure as interest rates continue to rise. Now to Los Angeles, where it has been a busy day for Prime Minister Justin Trudeau at the Summit of the Americas. He met with the U.S. President and the Governor of California and took part in a session with the other leaders. And Evan Dyer has all the details.
Prime Minister Trudeau met with California Governor Gavin Newsom this morning, and the two signed a memorandum of cooperation on the environment. That's actually pretty broad in that it's not just about emissions, but also things like vehicle standards, biodiversity, plastics in oceans. But if it is broad, it's also perhaps a little thin in the sense that some of the language is a bit vague and aspirational. It talks about sharing information and best practices and working together in various other ways that aren't that well defined and don't produce necessarily concrete reductions in emissions, for example. We have seen part one clause of this agreement being about plastics, and of course Canada was supposed to have banned plastics on January 1st of this year, but has pushed that back following resistance from the industry. So there were some questions this morning about the conflict between the rhetoric on emissions, for example, and the reality of a government that has bought a pipeline, that has just approved a major offshore oil project. And Prime Minister Trudeau responded by acknowledging that Canada is an oil and gas producing country, but saying that Canada is taking concrete action in the pricing of pollution and the pricing of carbon and leading the way in the world on that front. Let's listen to him.
Moving forward on climate change is really hard for us. We have a thriving fossil fuel industry in this country. But what I understood and what I've always demonstrated is that the fact that we have that means it's all the more important for us to step up and show real leadership on fighting climate change.
Right after that, Prime Minister Trudeau met with President Joe Biden, who was in a somber mood, and opened his remarks by talking about tonight's televised congressional hearings into the events of January 6th last year, the assault on the Capitol. And President Biden said that Americans tonight may learn new details about just how serious that attempt to derail the election really was. Prime Minister Trudeau responded by saying that democracy is under threat and that both countries have to fight it. And he said that one of the ways they have to restore faith in democracy and government is by getting cost of living under control. Evan Dyer, CBC News, Los Angeles.
The Public Health Agency of Canada has issued a monkeypox travel warning. The agency is advising travelers to take extra precautions when going abroad. But the fact remains, monkeypox is already spreading here in Canada, and much of the advice travelers are getting could be used to help everyone protect themselves from the virus. Lauren Pelly has those details.
At this clinic in Montreal, officials are racing to contain Quebec's monkeypox outbreak. These smallpox shots offer cross-protection against both viruses.
I can say so far that it's been 816 doses already administered.
Some of those signing up are close contacts of confirmed cases. Others work in professions that could put them at a higher risk of getting infected, like Lawrence Clifford Reddy, a massage therapist.
I'm hands-on throughout the whole body.
Skin-to-skin contact is largely how this virus spreads. This clinic has treated roughly 15 patients so far.
We started with one case every 2 or 3 days, and now we're assessing 1 to a few cases a day, depending.
For some patients, the telltale lesions are incredibly painful and appear across the body. For others, they're barely noticeable, only appearing on certain body parts, including the hands, face, or genital areas, even hidden inside the mouth.
We simply suggest to individuals to cover their lesions and stay isolated as much as possible.
Some health officials warn large summer gatherings may accelerate virus spread, and the World Health Organization says halting transmission now is key.
The risk of monkeypox becoming established in non-endemic countries is real.
The majority of cases being reported in this unprecedented global outbreak have been among men who have sex with men. The Gay Men's Sexual Health Alliance is now trying to raise awareness of an illness that's unfamiliar to most Canadians.
Pride is just around the corner, and our message so far has been that monkeypox is something to be paying attention to.
He says the broader public should also be aware.
We don't know the current trajectory of where we're going with monkeypox infections, but there's nothing to suggest that it won't impact folks in many different communities across the country.
Lauren Pelly, CBC News, Toronto.
Now, here in the city, Toronto Public Health has now identified 9 positive cases of monkeypox, and 23 more are under review. Still, as Lauren was reporting, the majority of the 100 or so Canadian cases are coming from Quebec. Health authorities say this is the first documented case of monkeypox spreading from human to human in North America, with no known travel links to Africa, where the disease is more common. Overall, monkeypox is a rare disease that comes from the same family of viruses that cause smallpox. Ontario says it's currently giving a vaccine to close contacts of confirmed or probable cases and is actively trying to secure more doses through the Public Health Agency of Canada. Dr. Alison McGeer is an infectious diseases specialist at Mount Sinai Hospital, and she's joining me now to talk more about all of this. Thank you for being with us.
Hi, Chris.
So data from the World Health Organization shows that more than 24 countries that have not previously identified monkeypox cases have now reported more than 1,000 cases combined recently. What does this global spread indicate to you?
What it does actually mostly at the moment is raise a lot of questions. We've known for some years that there's been more monkeypox than there's previously been in a number of countries in West Africa. We haven't understood the problem, and people were just, I think, getting to it when COVID hit, and so we don't clearly understand what's happening in Africa, but very clearly that increase has been associated with the exportation, because we live in a global world and people move, of cases around the world. And whether this has been to some degree under the radar for longer than we think, or whether this is new, we don't know. Whether there's something different about the virus that is permitting easier transmission from person to person, we don't know. So there's a long list of unanswered questions that we are working on answering at the same time as everybody's working on trying to contain this outbreak, while it is still containable, and while we can still use, ring vaccination approaches to stop it from spreading broadly around the world.
I want to pick up on that last question that you raised, because we're certainly learning that the vast majority of infections are being found in men who have sex with men. And I know that that's prompted fears within the queer community that it's spreading more easily or possibly even sexually transmitted. So what do researchers know so far, if anything at all, about how this virus is being transmitted? And is it possible that the method of transmission is changing here?
It's probably not true that the method of transmission is changing. We know that monkeypox is transmitted from person to person with close skin-to-skin contact. So you don't actually have to invoke sexual transmission. It doesn't have to be semen or vaginal fluids that are infected in order for there to be transmission during the act of sex, or for that matter, just when you're in close contact with somebody. So I think the leading hypothesis at the moment is that it's in this community not because it's sexually transmitted or different, but because the people in this community who are infected are people who have a great deal of close contact with many other people. And so that's what's providing it the opportunity to spread. That does not mean that it can't be sexually transmitted, and the virus has actually now been isolated in semen. But there's a long way to go from that to really understanding what this is. And it is still unquestionably true that it's close contact that results in transmission of this disease. And although most of the cases have been in people who identify as men who have sex with men, not all of the cases have been. And this is an infection that is spread from person to person with any close contact.
Okay, and so given that close contact concern with Pride Month in full swing here in Ontario, knowing that the vast majority of the cases are in queer people, what should members of the community be thinking about around monkeypox to protect themselves?
So this is about recognizing the disease, understanding, it's the same thing that your mother always told you, and that we've been talking about with COVID. This usually starts with a febrile illness followed by a rash. If you have a febrile illness, if you have a rash, if you have lesions of any kind, you should not be going out and having close contact with other people. And in general, particularly if they're genital lesions or oral lesions that aren't sort of your classical, cold sores, you should be checking in with your doctor if you're part of the community that's at high risk to make sure that you don't have monkeypox. So really it's about, again, as with COVID, keeping your distance from people if you are ill, making sure that if you have an illness that is compatible with monkeypox, that you don't have close contact with other people until you're recovered from it.
And just finally and really quickly, when people hear about diseases in this kind of COVID world, they get obviously very concerned. How concerned do you think people should be given this monkeypox outbreak?
You know, I think there's still very good reason to believe that we can contain the outbreaks as they are now, and that we have enough stocks of vaccine around the world to be able to adequately protect people before these outbreaks get too big in any one country. It's going to need a lot of work on the part of public health and on the part of healthcare providers to make that happen. However, it's also true that with what's going on in West Africa, monkeypox is going to be something that's now exists in the world, can be transmitted out. And so we really need a substantial focus on public health and on research to understand what's going on, and to decide, whether we need broader vaccination programs to make sure that we're getting good data on. We do have a treatment for it, which is wonderful, but we need to know more about how well it works and how it can be used. So it's really important that there's a big push to learn more about it so that it doesn't become something worse. Certainly not going to be anything like COVID is, but it's still, it's a new disease that we're going to, in some way, have to learn to live with.
Dr. McGeer, thank you so much for your time tonight.
Pleasure to talk to you, Chris.
And Dr. Allison McGeer is an infectious diseases specialist at Mount Sinai Hospital. WestJet is being called out by trans advocates for not allowing people to use the X gender marker when booking flights instead of male or female. They say the airline is violating their rights. Felicia Chandler has more on the story.
So I finally figured out why WestJet wasn't letting me check in online. It's because I'm trans.
Is Lloyd, a civil servant living in Halifax, recently chose WestJet for a flight, but they say checking in was an ordeal, all because they're non-binary.
I found online that this has been an issue for 3 years, and they've been called out multiple times, and they always give an excuse of it's Transport Canada, or, by the end of this year, like, it's always just like, we'll get to it. Well, it's been 3 years now.
Upon initially booking a series of WestJet flights last week, Lloyd noticed only male or female options were provided under gender. Lloyd picked one and assumed it would be a simple change at the airport, but quickly found out it would be anything but. WestJet staff would not let Lloyd board until using one of those two options.
They told me straight up that the reason I was being flagged was because I was trans. That was the only reason. There was no other reason for it. And just the treatment I got from the WestJet agents wasn't great.
And while Transport Canada says gender is needed to estimate the weight of passengers, a category for people with the X marker was added in 2019. Maddie McMillan, a policy analyst and trans person, says along with other community members, she drafted a call to action proposal for WestJet. She says WestJet has until the end of June to fix the problem.
We have a couple of law firms offering their services, looking at either class sort of situations, but any sort of way to lever towards a way that each party can hold their head high on an airplane. That's what we're driving towards.
This week, WestJet announced it is working to change its domestic reservation systems to include gender X by the end of 2022, and that they're working with the community. In a statement, WestJet says, "At WestJet, it is our commitment to ensure our guests have an equitable travel experience, and we owe a further explanation and apology regarding our progress on adding non-binary options to our booking and check-in systems." Lloyd says they've been consistently ignored by the airline in the past, and they hope to see WestJet stick to its word. Felicia Chandler, CBC News, Halifax.
Mayor John Tory was in the Church Wellesley neighborhood today to announce funding that will support the queer community.
I'm here to announce a $250,000 commitment in additional funding in this year's budget to help with the 519 Community Centre. We have a long, proud history as a city, long before I was mayor, but continuing during the time I have been mayor, of support for the 2S LGBTQ+ communities.
So as the mayor just said, the funding will go towards the 519. That's a community center at the heart of the Church Wellesley neighborhood. And Tory says it will help create community activities, events, and programs in Barbara Hall Park, such as speakers and art installations. The funding also aims to enhance safety and well-being in the community with self-defense workshops for women, trans, and non-binary people. The 519 board welcomed the funding that was approved earlier this year by City Council. The Royal Ontario Museum is launching a new free summer program. It's part of its effort to attract new audiences and rebuild culture as Toronto moves out of the pandemic. Natalie Collada has that story.
I will paddle the rivers of Turtle Island.
Revitalizing history and rethinking culture.
I will be a girl. I will be shamed.
The video launched today is part of a push from the Royal Ontario Museum to bring back visitors and attract new ones.
We need to connect it to people's lives so that they care. And that's the focus of what we're doing.
Starting today, the ground floor of the museum will be free. There will be a pop-up coffee bar, free live music, along with free access to several exhibits, including a suite of Asian galleries and First Peoples art and culture.
There are a whole series of projects and exhibitions that we're doing. So if you come into the museum, My Pandemic Story is our first crowdsourced exhibition that shows kids' artwork and poetry and film and digital work about how they got through the pandemic and what was the emotional life, what was the experience. That's not a project we would have done before.
Creating connections through history. The museum hopes to reach more people, and it seems to already be working.
It's quite impressive. I did like the jazz at the entrance.
Yeah, that is something that we don't, like, we came from Brazil, so we don't have that kind of attractions there.
The space that it provides people to experience culture that they might not otherwise is really just such a phenomenal asset to the city.
Learn a lot from history. I feel like you kind of take something different away every time you come here.
And that, say organizers, is exactly the point.
We're coming out of the pandemic at a time when people have been uncomfortable coming out of their homes. So this is meant as a clarion call, come back to culture, come back to the ROM.
The free main floor summer program runs from now until September 25th. Natalie Collada, CBC News, Toronto.
With all the cloud cover, today might have been a good day to go to the ROM, but I have been hanging by all hour, Dahlia, to hear more about this warm-up and nicer weather that's coming our way?
That's right, Chris. And I was actually going to say, the ROM might be a good thing to do on Saturday and Sunday, and I'll explain why in just a bit. First, let's start off with what we're going to do this weekend. Well, we're going to prepare. And then it's Friday tomorrow. Thank God it's Friday. And then we're going to have that damp weekend that I was talking about. But first, the current temperatures in Toronto are 22 degrees today, and Hamilton 21. Same thing in St. Catharines. Kitchener 20 degrees. Oshawa a bit on the cooler side, 19 degrees. It wasn't humid today as much as it was 2 days ago. Now, as you can see here, that precipitation is slowly making its way through to Toronto. It is going to rain a little bit tonight, but that will clear up overnight. As you can see here, Friday 1 a.m. It's nice clear skies, and that will continue tomorrow for your commute. You're going to have a nice dry commute to work, but that will change slowly as we head into Saturday. A little of those clouds coming through, that precipitation just made its way through, and as you can see here, that activity of the precipitation. So that's how Saturday will look. More of that rainfall coming in Saturday afternoon, and that will continue until 8 p.m. Overnight tonight, Toronto, 13 degrees. Like I said, there is scattered rain, and that will clear up overnight. Same thing across the board here. St. Catharines, a nice clear night as well. A little bit of cloud coverage in Mississauga and Markham and Oshawa as well. Now look at your 5-day forecast tomorrow. That beautiful sunshine that we were talking about earlier, so you can take advantage of that. Go out, Illuminato Festival. I know there's some things to do there. Saturday and Sundays, when you might want to head indoors, maybe go to the Raw Museum or some of the activities happening with Illuminato. 23 degrees high, 20 degrees. Monday and Tuesday, we get that sunshine. 25 degrees high, 24 degrees on Tuesday. Another dry commute for work on Monday and Tuesday. Chris?
You're crushing my dreams with that Saturday, Sunday, but I will hang on for tomorrow.
Go to the ROM, Chris.
Thanks, Talia.
Sounds good.
All right, we're going to take a quick break, but as we head to break, here's a look at where the markets closed today. The TSX closed down 229 points. The Dow fell by 638 points, and the dollar traded lower at 79 cents US. We'll be right back. Quebec plans to close an immigration pathway used by many international students. And starting next year, it will no longer be possible for students at unsubsidized private colleges to get a work permit. It comes after a report by the provincial government that identified problems in the private college system. Rowan Kennedy has that story.
I think these private colleges, they played with the lives of students.
Harleen Kaur says she experienced firsthand predatory recruitment and deception in Quebec's private college system. Now she runs an organization that helps foreign students.
It's good that they're taking out an initiative, but they need to look at the end results of this.
In recent years, the number of international students, particularly from India, has skyrocketed. Most take study programs at private, non-subsidized colleges. Following reports by CBC and Radio-Canada, a government investigation revealed shortcomings around recruitment, commercial practices, and teaching conditions.
It's a question of integrity.
Quebec's Labour Minister says the schools use the lure of a work permit to recruit foreign students, but once they're done school, those students leave the province. Now, working with Ottawa, that immigration gateway will be closed. Only graduates of public or subsidized private college will be able to get a work permit. The new rules will go into effect in the fall of 2023.
There will be a period of transition that will be sufficient for those institutions to adapt.
Here at Hertzing College, more than half of the students are from abroad. The school's general director says after this announcement, non-subsidized private colleges are going to have to restructure. Michael McAllister says the government should be supporting the school's work programs for foreign students.
I mean, immigration is still one of the biggest solutions to our employment needs.
I want to know whether you think that it's going to affect your ability to survive as a school, this new rule.
Of course.
McAllister says all of the province's private colleges are suffering the consequences of a few bad apples. He says this new rule could have devastating consequences on the industry. Rowan Kennedy, CBC News, Montreal.
A new Canadian stage show, Dixon Road, is on now in High Park until June 19th. It's a story of immigration and celebrates the Little Mogadishu neighborhood here in Toronto. We caught up with the show's playwright, Fatuma Adar.
You're a Yale and I would scrape by day by day in the dark of night without a light to see. I tell myself that every day is a new opportunity.
Dixon Road is a new musical about a Somali family who immigrates to Toronto in the 90s and what it means to travel to new places with your dreams. How can you be an individual and have your independence while still being a part of the community?
Maybe under different circumstances. You've got your whole life ahead of you, so many options to figure out how you could be.
I loved musicals growing up, so to be able to have an opportunity where the musical is about a family that looks like mine, with music that has like R&B and rap and, you know, like your Disney feels like, and Mogadisco, like it's something that I don't think these Black Muslim families really get an opportunity to be celebrated and vibrant on stage for.
Cross your hands on your heart. Make your intentions.
We're we're in an outside theater, as you can see, which is incredible. I feel like it allows us to be a lot more casual. I feel like we haven't had theater in so long. Like, we haven't been able to sit down and enjoy a show. So come to Hyde Park, sit down, get a little cozy blanket, and witness a new Canadian musical.
You see, the true north, strong and free, means you can be whoever you want to be.
As long as you can be who you are quietly.
Oh, even better yet, do it in English, please.
Come on, don't get me wrong. It's a wonderful place. You'll find where you belong. You finally feel.
Canada Post unveiled 5 new stamps at CAPEX 22 today. Their hope is to make us feel nostalgic for the heyday of Canadian travel.
A lot of archival research goes into the production of these stamps, trying to find images that really capture that golden age of travel and also represent Canada's beauty from coast to coast.
So CAPEX 22 is an international stamp convention, and the stamps feature vintage travel posters of popular Canadian tourist destinations such as Mont Tremblant and the Great Lakes. Canada Post says this represents a golden age of commercial art and tourism marketing in Canada. And those stamps are now on sale online or at local post offices. All right, so Dahlia, my friend, we have one planned trip of camping this entire summer.
Okay.
Do you want to hazard a guess at which weekend we picked?
Oh, it's this weekend, isn't it?
This is why I was saying you're crushing my dreams.
But you know what? That will test your outdoor skills, Chris. That's what it's all about, camping anyways, right? Enjoy it. All right, so let's start off here. Toronto today, we're sitting at 22 degrees. Not so bad. We do have those winds gusting in, so it feels a little bit cooler. Winds are 22 degrees. And like we talked about, the overnight conditions, winds are going to be gusting 20 kilometers an hour, but it will increase to 40 kilometers an hour, but a clear night overall. And tomorrow we get those lovely conditions, 22 degrees. I don't know, enjoy it tomorrow, Chris, while you can, before you have to camp outdoors and it's raining.
You better believe I will be enjoying tomorrow. Thanks, Dahlia.
Thanks, have a good night.
And thank you for joining us. That's our show for tonight. We'll see you back here tomorrow night at 6. Have a great night, everybody.